for April Fool's Day 2019. I'd like to remind everyone our meetings are web streamed, and for those in attendance, please put your cell phones to vibrate. We had a busy couple of weeks since our last meeting. We've been able to accelerate the number of meetings, and last week we did do a tour of the existing facilities as well as tour the Brantford Laurier Y facility and the Wilmot Center. It was very eye-opening on both accounts. So we had some good successful times, but we're scrambling trying to collate all our information now and make sure that we're moving forward in an organized fashion. We'll start with the disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? If none, state no pecuniary interest declared. I have none. Ian? Ian?
No.
Kim? Okay, we have no changes, or sorry, no pecuniary interest declared. Approval changes to the agenda. I'd like to offer up one. We'll add the action items after the deputations, if we could. And we'll ask for an update on our 6th citizen member from county staff as well. Do we need a motion on adding anything like that to the agenda? Okay. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Can I have a motion to accept those changes? Kim, seconded by Ryan. All in favor? Passed. Okay, Mr. McElhone, I promised you early, and here you go. Can you just turn your mic on? There's a little talk button there. Thanks. That's just for the web streamers. I can hear you, but...
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for this opportunity. I would like to propose a Norplex location at the corner of Hillcrest Road and McDowell Road, also known as West Street. I own the 20-acre field adjacent to the soccer field and would be willing to sell the land to the township. The township already has the 40-acre soccer field, 12 acres of which are undeveloped as the ginseng was just harvested the end of the 2018 season. This would give Norfolk County a total of 60 acres in one of the most central locations in Norfolk County for Norplex, baseball diamonds, and soccer fields. A big part of this project is already completed and owned by Norfolk County. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Pardon?
Sorry, I didn't get my microphone on. It's very timely,
Okay.
given we're trying to nail down our site selection criteria, and you're in the right area there for consideration, so that was good. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McElhone? Ian.
Thank you. And through the chair to our deputation. Dave, thanks for bringing your name forward and your property for consideration. One question I did have for you is if you've had any discussion with any of the neighbors about potentially having the site built there. I do know that some of our other deputations that have come forward have kind of asked around and tried to get some buy-in or some input to see if there's any concerns or if anyone was excited about the idea as well. I was just wondering if you've had any feedback from the neighborhood in general regarding your idea to potentially, sell the land.
No, I haven't had any feedback from the neighbors. The 22 acres that is south of the soccer field and this proposed 20 acres, we also own that. That's where our house is. That's where we live. And so we own the adjacent land to it on the south as well. To the west is, it's a farm. And but no, I haven't spoken with anybody about it at all. This is really the starting point.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. McElholm. Is the property bisected by the road? I'm just trying to draw the map in my head, and you said 20 acres south of the soccer fields, and then to the west as well. Is that over Hillcrest on the other side of Hillcrest?
To the west is the, where Quick Internet, I believe, owns that.
Okay.
So it's Hillcrest
That-
Road that separates it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's right at the corner of the stoplights. To the north is the lighting store and that subdivision there.
Okay,
So-
yeah, thank you, that helped pinpoint it down a little bit better.
But there are no
Thanks.
buildings, there are no buildings on the property that we own. I believe there's a house that was severed off of the northwest corner, but I had nothing to do with that, so.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Neville, do you have any questions or comments about the infrastructure requirements on this property?
No, I do not have any questions at this point. It's a little premature for me as I'm still getting a lay of the land. Thank you.
Any final comments, sir?
No, I appreciate being able to present.
Well, thank you very much for coming, and thanks for the short and sweet deputation today.
Okay.
We'll be talking to you later.
Yeah, I'm a farmer. I don't normally do this kind of thing, so. All right,
Thanks a lot.
thank you.
In accordance with our agenda amendment, we'll run through the action items now, and we'll just check up on where we stand on some of these. Action item 1, the application process for the replacement member. I had a quick chat with Kristen beforehand, so we'll just ask for a staff update on this if we could.
Through the chair, I'm getting the look that that's my job. So anyways, a staff report goes on February 9th directly to the council meeting. We had, I believe, 9 applications, and staff have went through the applications, and we are recommending or selecting one individual that stands out for a few reasons. However, it'll be in camera at that meeting, and full council will see all applications, and they may choose that individual, they may not choose that individual. So February 9th.
And by February, you mean April.
Sorry, April 9th.
Gotcha.
Okay. Keep me right here.
Okay. We'll hold off on that until our next meeting. We'll welcome our new member. I hope that person will be brought in for the next RFAB meeting.
Through the chair, I believe it is fairly quick. Clerks will reach out to the individual. Usually if they've applied, they're interested, unless, life is throwing a curveball at them, and we try to get them up running as quick as possible.
Excellent. Okay. Matt Terry, is he in the audience? Not yet, eh? Oh, is he? Okay. All right, we'll hold off on action item 2 until Matt shows up then, and we'll get some update there. Action item 3, site selection criteria. I think we're going to have a fair discussion today based on what Ian and JJ have been working on in the as our 2 requirements working group subject matter experts. So we'll hold off on action item 3 at this point. Action item 4, project map timelines, is also in our agenda, so we can hold that off until that time as well. Action item 5, central repository for sharing documents between members. This is getting near and dear to my heart as we start developing more and more data, especially after our last 2 tours. I sent Kristen 4 site plans for various other recreational facilities, hubs in the area, so we need to start managing all this excess data. Does staff have any update on the acquisition of a repository?
Through the chair, it has been addressed at SL, losing my voice here, at SLT, but I haven't got an answer on when they're moving ahead. I think it would probably, perhaps Mr. Neville would have to meet with their IT people to just get an idea exactly what we're after. But finance and IT were both at that meeting, and we have emails back and forth, so we're moving on it. We just haven't pulled the trigger or anything because I think we need a little more information.
Okay. Ian, comment?
I'm prepared to meet with anybody on that, sure.
Okay. I'll leave it with you guys to reach out to Ian and try and sort this out. Can we ask for another update next month and make sure that we're moving that file forward as quick as we can?
Yeah, through the chair to the board, I believe another month or the next meeting will give us lots of time to pull that together. So, Kristen,
Excellent.
if the minutes can reflect that as an action item for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Action item 6, contact parties previously notified regarding expressions of interest in their property. We heard from one of ours. Now, have we got any updates on the other ones? To staff again.
Through the chair to the board, this is one of those moments where I have a number of staff with me here today, which I guess I can introduce to my far right is Lydia Harrison, Property Management. Next to her is Shelley Darlington with Corporate Services. Sorry for that. Behind her is Gary Houghton, Director of Engineering, Rich Roberts, Supervisor of GIS, and to my immediate right is Pam Doosling, the GM of Developments and Cultural Services. So these staff members were asked to come here today because from the last meeting we're going to go in camera and they all have specialty in that. So this is one of those moments where I haven't discussed with Shelley about the list of how many or who exactly had contacted her, but now that Shelley is here, I'm not sure if that's something Shelley can speak about in camera or whether we'll just go away with direction and Shelley can go through a list of how many people contacted her but did not make it on the list in the in-camera stuff.
Right. We'll do that in the closed session and just to make sure that we don't disqualify anybody or step on anybody's toes. Okay. Action item 7, GIS mapping. Ian, any success moving forward that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Richard Roberts I met with him, and as a matter of fact, he gave me today the mapping that I was looking for. So that's very, very helpful.
Okay.
And thanks to him.
So we've got the data, we just haven't had time to analyze and develop questions or anything. Okay, good. Well, I guess we can cross that one off. Okay, action item 8. Just bringing staff into the closed session. We'll complete that action item today as well. So when we go into our closed session, we'll complete that. We did not get Mr. Simoes for this meeting, so action item 9 will be open until we get to hear his presentation on energy savings. Hopefully JJ will be around for that too. Action item 10. Information from 3 to 5 similar facilities with regard to the fundraising efforts.
Through the chair to the board, I'm hoping and talking to Todd Shoemaker that there were contacts made with Wilmot and then the Brantford Y, I think on the tour. So I guess I'll need some clarification. Todd didn't seem to have those, so I don't know if anybody here has those contacts or maybe they're still to get back to us. And I am still waiting, unfortunately, on the Bostwick group and the Komoka group as well as who did the fundraising. I think what I'm running into is, and as long as the Lakeshore facility as well, the Lakeshore facility had a private, or not private, but they hired an individual for 2 years to do the fundraising. They're trying to I guess that's the story on that. They're trying to track her down. And the same thing when I deal with the operational staff, as far as the fundraising, some of them were companies, some of them were staff that were hired for short term. They're trying to get me the contact information. So I'm not sure if the group necessarily wants to speak to the individual that did the fundraising, or whether we, if they can't be tracked down, whether we go to somebody within the municipality, and that may be where I have to go. I don't know if I can actually get the person that was in charge of the fundraising, but there's got to be a staff member that knew about the committee or something like that. So again, not really apologizing, it just takes longer to get that information together.
Okay. I did take a picture of the fundraising committee kind of honor board in Wilmot for the first phase, because Wilmot was built in 2 phases. The arenas were like 2007, whereas the pool was like 2011, 2012 timeframe. In the arena, they had a fundraising committee sign, and if I'll get my phone to wake up back up here, there was 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 people on that fundraising committee, and I do have the name of his name's Tim Zehr, Z-E-H-R, the chair of their fundraising committee at Wilmot. So I did just grab that from a picture.
So to the chair, for the minutes, so are we comfortable with Wilmot? If that is the person, and will it be up to the board to track that individual down, or would you like staff to, and then come back with the 3 to 5?
I'd like you to try and establish contact with Wilmot, and maybe if you can reach Mr. Zehr, I'm sure he'll have the best picture of how they did their fundraising. But that's a pretty good example in our very local area of a successful fundraising campaign, from what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Amy had followed up with a clarification on this year's budget for the hub, action item 11. Do we want to just include this message for the record on this? Okay. Let me just give 1 second to read this through so I don't have to read the entire thing. Okay, the bottom line for the board, there's approximately $126,000 left in this year's budget for the multi-use recreational facility project, with the thinking that this was going to be used for architectural design bids and things like that. So we're our last 2 trips, by the way, as far as I know, the Citizens Board had 0 cost, and I'm not sure the county incurred any cost on that or not.
To my knowledge, staffing, there's no charge for staffing. For
Okay, so we still have $126,000 then in this year's budget.
Through the chair, if I can, through that point, I don't see a lot of expense. I guess I'll just have to judge on each meeting. I do know that generally the GIS folks do charge for their mapping, and that would be a charge, I believe, Rich, we would come forward with. So probably that 126 will show the deduction for the mapping, which I don't think is very much at all, but I will keep the group abreast as we do spend the nickels and dimes may add up.
Okay. Ian.
Thank you. Through the chair, we also had $5,000 that was set aside specifically for site tours, and I was of the understanding that it was also for any advertisements that we may need in order to get subject matter experts, whether that be attracting a fundraiser down the road, but that was an ability that this board had to budget a small amount of monies for either further site visits, but I believe also advertising was included in that regard. So there is a small separate pot from that $126,000, and I think we need to just consider that money moving forward when we start thinking about potentially soliciting for any consultant work or any work pertaining to design, fundraising, because there's a little bit of money there that we could potentially utilize. If it's going to go unused, it would be an appropriate resource for us to look at advertising and getting that key individual for. I'm specifically thinking the fundraising piece as I'm speaking now, but it also could be with regards to possibly exploring a design element to the hub.
Right. I don't think we'll get much for our money for $5,000 worth of design, but we'll definitely be able to use
Could
it
be a
for,
newspaper ad.
for some of the fundraising and advertising for sure, and make sure the whole county is aware, not just people on the web streaming of this stuff. And demographic projections. I think we were given some extra demographics, at least I was provided with some 2009 demographic study material, but given the pace of the last week, I haven't been able to get through the 3 documents that were sent to me. Do you have anything to add there, Bill?
Through the chair, I might put Pam on the spot here. It was the Henson report, Pam, and perhaps Ms. Dusling can explain how that document was developed through planning, and how current it is and what went in behind it. I think it's a good document, so I'll turn it over to Pam.
Thank you, through the chair. I know our General Manager of Public Works, I think, assisted in providing you that information. I apologize, I was away. So I'm not 100% sure of the actual documents that you've received. I'm assuming that you've received the latest Henson study, which is what we still go through with our population increases.
From 14? From
Yep.
2014?
Yeah, and I'm not sure the other documents that you received, but I know that as part of our most recent official plan review that wrapped up last year, we had an amendment to that where we looked at it to make sure it was updated and moving forward in our growth and our urban boundaries and what was to come in the future. I'm not sure if you received any information in that regard. If not, I can provide. But yep, that is the document that we use today, and I understand there will be some additions or maybe perhaps an amendment to that current study to assist this group moving forward.
Okay, thanks. Is that the last page? Yes, it is. So that handles our action items. We're back to our regular agenda, and the next thing on that agenda is a closed session. So, I think I've got some fancy words to read here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Matt, would you like to update us with some stuff? You have action item 2 was recommendations for a communication plan for fundraising, and just a general fundraising update. Or communications update, I'm sorry. I'll ask him if he needs to, and we'll update it as required.
Good.
Go ahead.
So I think there's a few things here. In conversation with JJ briefly last week, and in thinking through some of this, I think what I would recommend is a few things. One is much of our communications plan, I think, is going to have to be built around this roadmap that I think you guys have been discussing a little bit. So certainly we can start thinking about, how do we provide regular updates to the community, think about a bit of a regular schedule of those updates, whether that's a weekly or monthly standing item that we discuss and think about getting out there. But a lot of that's going to be built around this roadmap. So I think we can have a more fulsome conversation when that is together. That's one. The other is I think I would like to sit down with the members of the communications subgroup and start thinking about some more targeted communication. So what are the real goals at this point that we want to accomplish with this group? So I would suggest things like just raising awareness of this group itself and when the meetings are and what you're doing and the tours that you might be on and what you're thinking about, the site criteria stuff when that is firmed up, and start really thinking through those items as we get more and more specific as time goes on. So I think that's probably where we're at right now, and I think if this group is good with that, I'd like to spend some time with the members of that subcommittee and start to think through those goals a little bit. And then I would suggest to all of you, as you see opportunities to let the community know about what it is you're doing, or you see things coming down the pipe that you'd like input on, or I see there was some discussion last meeting around citizen surveys and things like that. Let's talk about how myself or our group might be able to help you either with advice or with some actual assistance in getting some of that out. So we're certainly available to help with that as we move along. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm happy to talk through more specifics around things, but I think that's the point we're at right now, is really sitting down with the subgroup and working through a more detailed plan.
Well, I don't think we have a communications subgroup particularly identified. Right now, we've kind of got the fundraising / communications.
Yes.
But Gord's not here today, so it makes it a little difficult to have a breakout session for that. But well, go ahead, Sue. What have you got?
Thank you, through the chair. I was just wondering, what is your timeline to sit down with the community members? Because I think we are working right now, and to get out that information that we are working on this would be pertinent to the timeline.
Yeah, so we can do that at any point. So I had an initial conversation last week with JJ, sort of informally before some of you were on the tours, to get some of that rolling, and so I'm available at any point now. And I think what we're able to start now thinking about, as you may or may not know, our group is relatively new to the county itself, right? So we're in the middle of just forming ourselves up. So we've got some other things sort of happening. But I think we're at the point now where we're starting to roll along, and we can just work in some of this sort of communications into the daily work that we're doing, which is nice. So we're starting to think about, okay, this week, what is it that we'd like to get out to the community, and how do we want to do that, and how can we think about that with this group? So we can start doing those sorts of things immediately. What we need is a little bit of help with what is this group thinking about? What is it that you want people to know? And beyond just your existence and the logistical stuff, what are the real messages we want to leave people with in this early stage? So that's sort of a vague answer to your question, but I think that the timeline is immediately.
Just to piggyback on that, I mean, the timeline is now, and the message we want to get out to the people right now is that we're working to get this thing done. I think a lot of the county is still of the opinion that this is still in the wishy-washy might happen phase, and we want to be assertive and let people know that this board is not here to waste our time. We're here to get this done. So I think we need to be a lot more assertive getting the message out, both electronically and via a billboard or something to that ability, saying the hub is coming. And I wish we came up with a better name for it, but we're still struggling with, yeah. I keep calling it the Simcoe Health and Athletic Recreation Center. It's the Simcoe Geographic, but it's Norfolk's hub. So I just want to make sure. Ian, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, to Matt here, would you be available to come back for our next RFAB meeting on May the 6th? I think it'd be prudent for you to attend. Hopefully at that time we've made it known publicly, our last vacancy would be filled. I think it'd be a great team building opportunity for us possibly either to have a group photo, something to update the website with, good news story to kind of announce that we've finally filled all the positions on the board, and if we're not all in attendance, maybe we could even have an individual profile created, because I think that's really crucial for the communication piece, that people know who's serving on this committee, maybe a little bit about their background, and it'd be sort of a soft thing to update the website with, but it's good to have some news. And right now I feel that there's a little bit of a lull in what we're actually communicating out there. I am looking at the website right now, and we're speaking earlier about the fact that we've moved our meetings to the first Monday of the month, and it used to be on the second. So there's some tweaks that need to be made to the website, but wouldn't that be a great opportunity to take advantage of that time frame, just to do a little bit of PR and start getting some more information and get ready for more regular updates. Hopefully you've had a chance to chat with some of our civilian appointees regarding what a communication plan would look like. I would also really like to see perhaps a draft communication plan, and if not in its entirety, maybe some of those key benchmarking communications that you'd be looking for. And I'd love even a response if you think that would be in order, or if you're available, what your thoughts are on possibly getting some strategic communications out early without having that final plan in place.
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. One is, I believe I am available, I'll confirm that, but we've started to look ahead at these meetings and know that we think it would likely be useful to you, and I'm hearing from you that you would find it useful to have myself or someone from our office here. So we'll make sure that we're able to do that. I think that's a great idea. Using those natural times in the calendar for pieces of the communication cycle. So whether it's things like you've just suggested, filling out the group as an opportunity to communicate. Absolutely, it's a fantastic thought, and let's do that. And then the third there is just the thought around the website. So, not to repeat myself, but again, our group is relatively new. We started sort of just as the web stuff was being put together for this project. So I think it would be fair to say we need to take some time to look at that site and think about how we can use that to its best, to our best ability to communicate the message of this group. So point taken about taking a look at that particular property, and I think we can do some work with it. Absolutely. Sorry, and then a communications plan. Yes, absolutely. So I think what would be nice would be to have some discussion with some of the individual members here, and again with that communications and fundraising group, and think through some of those key times in the calendar, some of those points at which we can plan for updates to the community, and then think about the other sorts of things that aren't found naturally in the calendar. So what are the kind of stories we want to tell here? What are the things we want people to know about this project? What do we want them to know about you guys? What do we want them to know about, blank? So we can have those conversations and then bring some of those thoughts back here. I'd be happy to do that, yeah.
I think one of the key things we have to do is, Amy sent me a 2-page list of a whole bunch of interested groups in this, or groups that should be interested in this project. And rather than have them, kind of come push us information, I think we're going to have to try and pull some information from them to let them know that we're actually very, very interested in hearing from them what their requirements are, what their concerns are moving forward, so that we can properly address it. So I would like to know, is your group big enough to actually contact this list of people and kind of give us feedback how many you've contacted by the next meeting?
Difficult to answer that question. I'm not sure the list that you have, but I think that would be worth a discussion. I think we are a relatively small group. There are 4 of us in total, one being a graphic designer who is probably not going to be doing this sort of work, so it leaves just a couple of us. So I think we're prepared to do a number of things for this group. That sort of thing may fall a bit outside of our usual work, but I think it would be worth discussing how we might proceed with something like that. And if it's not something that we can help with, we're certainly available to provide some advice around how to do that, how we can, how we do some of those, for lack of a better word, internal communications about this project to stakeholders and others who might be interested in it. So difficult to answer that question directly, but happy to chat about it and see how we can help you best.
Okay. Kim, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you to Matt. Not just for you, but general comment is that I think that it's prudent that as this committee takes the lead in the information that goes out to the community regarding the community hub, and that and no disrespect to our local media, to the radio station, to the newspaper, but we need to be the leaders in the information being shared. And for example, if I wasn't on this committee or I wasn't a council member, when I see articles like I saw on the local radio station, to me, a layman's understanding would be, so, I don't know, they're still looking at Talbot Gardens, like, so is there going to be a hub? Is there not? We are going to have one. So I don't really think that has even been messaged properly to the citizens of Norfolk County. And so some of these things, I think we're jumping way ahead and we're not there yet. My suggestion would be is that we lead with the information, and they come to us for that information, and we get it out there, whether it be on, well, the county doesn't have Facebook, right? It's Twitter and the website. And we get that out there. And the other thing too is that completely know that we need to have the community buy in. And the other piece is that I think the real excitement from the community and where then all of these leaps happen is when there's a site selection. It's pretty hard to get excited about minutes and action items and things like that for the general public. So when we get, hopefully within the next couple of months, to that site selection and we have a hard line, this is where it's going to be. Does that kind of make sense?
The county does in fact have a Facebook page. Yes, there are. Yes, it does make sense. And I think that comes back to the comment earlier about the website and taking ownership of it. I think that'll be a key piece for us in this project because that will allow us to own that information, right? So, we've got a centralized communications team here. We've got this group working on the project. We are able to control that information, present it in a way that meets the needs of this group and informs citizens. So that will be the core of where we communicate about this project. And then where hopefully we can give you some expertise in dealing with the media and making sure those messages are conveyed clearly and properly, and so there's no confusion with our media partners. So absolutely, yeah, and that's why it's so important, I think, for us in our group in particular to get established and start asserting some ownership over those digital properties in particular, so that we have some control over that information, and so that a year, 2 years from now, we're not dealing with a spread of continued spread of misinformation around the work of this group. So you've identified an incredibly important part there.
Go ahead, sir.
Can I ask to set a date with our group, that is, so that we can have this meeting, so we can get this information out before the next meeting of RFAB?
Are you volunteering to act as the communications sub-working group chair?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Bill.
To the chair of the committee. Yeah, I guess, not to be a stick in the mud, but just, I'm the staff liaison person here, and I really think, I feel for Matt because I know the department's just going together. I've spoken with his supervisor, and there is some concern about how much work is going to be needed and what are you going to need, and I did my best to say at each meeting, we'll try to get motions for larger council, and that gives staff time to sit back and go, yeah, Matt, you could set a day aside to meet with these folks, not a problem, because I don't want to, Matt, with multiple deadlines and not, the group's going to get frustrated, where is Matt? So I think if we had a motion basically asking that, and I don't know how we worded here, I'm not a wordsmith at all right now, but if you did say have board members Sue to meet with Matt, describe what they need, and then Matt has his action items come back to the next meeting. Does that sound, give you a little more guidance, Matt, and help you going back and managing your workload?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate you jumping in. I hope that doesn't seem like I'm also not trying to be uncooperative. Happy to have those meetings. So, but I think that is probably the best route to make sure things are sort of done the right way, if that makes sense. But yes, if we want to go through the mechanisms necessary, that would be useful, and then we can set that date.
Yeah, we'll come up with a motion to get council to put you to task rather than us trying to overload you. We're not your only thing. I recognize that. Ryan, you had something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And through you to Mr. Terry, let's say during a meeting something big happens that we do want a communication piece out relatively soon. Are you happy with, I understand this particular instance, setting that date to go through a formal motion, but if we're like, this is big, can we have a tweet out about this today? That sort of stuff's fine, right?
Yeah, I think because of the nature of the work that we do, we couldn't possibly do each of the, and I know you know the answer to that, we couldn't possibly do that with everything. And so I'm happy to provide that feedback. If there's something that is too large for just sort of immediate response, I'll certainly let you know. But that's a good example. Should we just tweet something from a meeting, or should we do something? We can figure those sorts of things out. And I think I've done this for long enough to kind of know when those things will happen, as opposed to something that we need to sit and discuss and plan for. So rest assured, we won't just ignore something exciting happening because of lack of emotion.
Just making sure. Thank you, sir.
So back to controlling the message or regaining full control of the message, because it's so hard when they take a little snippet of your 5-minute conversation. They shape that any way they want, and then the public can perceive it any way they want. Would it be beneficial for us to have a press release after every meeting to kind of update them? Well, I'm just thinking, to let them know we've actually made some progress, and we could actually have another press release pre the next meeting so that people are listening and excited to come to the meetings.
Yeah, so a couple things there. One is I try not to talk in terms of controlling a message, and I say that partly facetiously, but partly seriously, because we're never in complete control of what it is that is out there in the world. So we'll do our best to manage that and to make sure that we're clear and concise with all stakeholders, media or otherwise. But once information is out there in the world, it is out there in the world. So that's just one item I wanted to address there. In terms of press releases, media releases, things like that, we can think of a bit of a schedule for alerting the community or local media partners to what's happening here. I guess that some of the advice I would give this group is that, especially in 2019, we don't necessarily have to rely on the somewhat old-fashioned media release to let people know about what is happening here. We can do that in a variety of ways. To be completely frank with this group, the local media landscape is somewhat limited, so we're not dealing with large numbers of reporters, so there are sometimes more efficient ways to let them know about what is happening here or what has happened. But certainly that is one means that we could look at, issuing media releases. This also takes us back to the previous discussion around ownership of the website and social media. Those would be other tools that we could use to keep reporters and others abreast of what is about to happen or has happened at this group. But I think it's a good idea, establishing a bit of a regimen for getting the agenda out there and letting people know of significant decisions that this group has made, certainly, whether that's media release or otherwise, absolutely. Yeah.
Have you got any idea how much billboard time would cost, say, at Queensway and 24?
I think...
How much? Okay.
I think those sorts of discussions would probably be best had in other venues. There's a variety of ways that our group and others in the county can communicate with our audiences, billboard and other. And then without getting into specifics, there's a variety of rates that we've worked out in different venues and have the ability to work out. So notwithstanding the I'm sure accurate information as it currently stands, there's room around those sorts of things. So, but I think if I sort of understand what I think you're getting at is, are there opportunities for us to spend a little bit of money to get some messages out to people? And the answer is yes, there certainly is.
Yeah, I'm thinking about some physical advertising, because we are building a physical building for physical activity, and all the virtual is really good and reaches out to a lot of people, but it does miss a certain number of people as well. So I'm just thinking we can give ourselves a little physical presence in the community. It may generate a lot more interest too. I don't know if we want to maybe get started on this. And Ian, you mentioned the $5,000 for advertising. Given that Sue's new committee is going to meet with Matt before our next meeting, should we recommend to the council that a certain amount of money be authorized to be spent on advertising before that next meeting? Sue?
Sorry, through you to the chair. I think it would be best to have a preliminary meeting with Matt to come up with a game plan together and then come back before we spend money on this, because I think what we need to know is, what is our game plan? What is our mission? What message do we want to send out to everybody? Because we want to be proactive with this, and I think coming back with more information to the next meeting would be beneficial, because we want to have the same platform. We want to know the website, the Facebook, the Twitter, and the platform that we're going to message out, and what are we going to message out. And I think it comes to getting the nitty-gritty down first, so everybody's on the same page.
I like it, but we do have to keep business moving forward so that we don't agree in May and then we see in June and it's already too late to get excited about something that's happened a month ago. So we'll just have to try and keep this business moving forward in the month in between. So if we're not ready to spend money, that's fine on that. But I would say that we need to start thinking about getting this message out in May latest. Ryan, you had your hand up first and then Ian.
Thank you, Chair Anderson, and through you to Kristen. Saw you scribbling when Bill had mentioned the motion that we would need to craft. I was hoping you wordsmith something there. Wrote that.
I was just motioning to Bill again. I think if you're going to stick with the preliminary meeting, we don't need a motion for that. But if you're looking for something more specific that you want Matt to prepare and spend additional time on, that we would need a motion.
And one more thing, Sue, what are you thinking for the preliminary? Just the brief overview sort of thing, or do you think it'll be something more substantial?
At this time, I'm not really sure, because I think we have to understand what they have to offer to share with everybody. And then bring that back as information and a game plan, almost a roadmap of the communication on our May 6th, and have something ready to go so that we can promote the work that's happening right now, because we want to be transparent, right?
If I can jump in, if this is helpful to add here, I think what we could give you without a ton of time and effort would be what you just described, a roadmap that's going to cover off much of what you likely already would be thinking about in terms of communications. Talk about some of the avenues we might have, some of the higher level messages that we're all already familiar with, that can at least get us going. That is not difficult. And then, in terms of putting down a real formal plan for this group that's going to last over time, I would suggest that be sort of something you save to put forward a motion and direct us to do. I'd appreciate that. I think that preliminary meeting, we can give you a bit of a shell, a roadmap that would get us going, and that would be fine. I would be content to do that. So.
Okay, thanks. Ian, you had a comment?
Through the chair, my comment was just that absolutely, I think direction has been given, and that's sufficient, that we don't actually need a motion. I wanted to comment on that, but also I want to comment regarding the $5,000 for advertising. It has already been given to RFAB. It's well within this body's prerogative to spend that money. It doesn't have to go back to council for ratification. It's that larger pot and those extra asks that would, in my opinion, need to go back to council in order to spend those dollars. So there's $5,000 in the pot for site visits, advertising purposes, and if we have a proposal to spend some of those monies in May, this board could approve and spend those funds. So just know that it doesn't have to go back to council, particularly that $5,000 pertaining to advertisements. It's well within this body's ability to approve of those funds. So if we had even an idea of spending that money, down the road, we could start shopping out what that ad might look like, whether it's digital, whether it's print or radio, and what that cost may be. And so long as it's under that dollar value, it is, again, within this board's ability to spend it.
Thank you, Ian. You just saved me 2 to 4 weeks, so that's good. Appreciate that. Based on who's here right now, who would like to assist Sue with this communications working group? Ryan? Awesome. I would like to join you as well, time permitting. But anybody else? Yeah.
I think since JJ has already met, I think we should throw him in and ask after if he wants to get included.
Yeah, well, Sue, if you'll... Sue, if you'll just take a little action item to write down the names of your new committee, then we'll be in contact, I'm sure. You've got everybody's name on the email distribution now, right?
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question that might be somewhat obvious, but the group that you've just formed here is different than the fundraising communications group that does exist?
Yes, yes.
Or will hive off the-
Fundraising communications will be for the purposes of fundraising. But
I gotcha.
This one is more for the purposes of getting the message out that we're in
Great.
existence and doing something.
Perfect.
Sure, we need a motion to create the communications working group that Sue is going to lead. Can I have a motion? Go ahead, Ian. You're good at this.
I'll move that Sue Dufresne create a communications subcommittee to work with Matt Terry and his team with other members of RFAB to investigate options for a communication plan moving forward.
Seconder? Discussion? Vote? All in favor? All right. Passed. Excellent. Okay, we have, Kristen, we have kind of slipped into the discussion discussion item C1, so we might as well hit C2, and then Matt will be out of school. So the citizen survey update, this was something Sue and I had talked a little bit about, as well as JJ creating the surveys for requirements. This is also part of our communication strategy, is to start getting people interested and start feeding us data that we'll soon have to manage. So I just want to bring up where we stand with the citizen surveys, and I think JJ has created a couple of survey pages with some questions. I don't know if I have it printed out with me or not. Yes, I do. So there's 7 questions on this survey. This is a user group questionnaire. What are your current needs? What are your future needs of your program? What's the bottom or minimum line requirements you need to move forward? What's the best case scenario you'd like to see? What are the your favorites in other facilities? Minimum standards through an association, and do you know of any funding through the government for this project or your particular sport or activity? I shouldn't just limit it to sports. So JJ put together that very nice questionnaire, and I think we'll try and get that out to those groups that we were talking about earlier, Matt. We just have to figure out exactly how we're going to do this. We might be just grabbing a few each on the board here, if your staff can't help due to the staffing.
Yeah, so let's. I think that we should talk about that, and we'll figure out a way forward. I guess the other thing I would say is once we get into this, especially as we ramp up communications on social, I would predict that we are likely to get a fair amount of feedback, solicited and otherwise. So we should probably think a little bit about how we get that to you, so that you know what people are telling us, whether you want to know it or not. That those comments will come. So, so we're talking Facebook comments and tweets and emails and whatever else we happen to see and come our way. So, which will be great. I think that'll be useful information for this group. We just need a means of getting it to you. So I bring that up now because that's sort of a different way of getting citizen feedback that I think will be just as important as those formal structured surveys that we'll put out.
Can we expect your staff to at least collate it in, we have sports, and then we have general concerns and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we'll figure out a way to. We're just going to bombard you with data, but and hopefully we do get lots of data. That would be a fantastic problem to have. But yes, we'll figure out a way to organize that in a useful manner to you, rather than just passing along every bit we get. But again, something to work out over time.
Okay. Do we have anything else for Matt or communications in general to discuss today? Very good. I'll use my fancy words now. I'd like to have a motion that the Recreational Facilities Advisory Board move into closed session at 4:27 PM to discuss matters pursuant to Section 239 Charlie of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Do I have the motion? Ian, second by Ryan. Discussion. Vote. All in favor? Okay, we're going to move into closed session, and I'm hoping this lasts no more than 30 minutes for anybody who's breathlessly watching online. Can I have a motion that the Recreational Facilities Advisory Board recess the closed session at 6:18 PM and reconvene in open session? Moved by Ian, seconded by Sue. Discussion? Vote? All in favor? Motion carries. And we're back. Okay, we have had our site selection criteria update in closed session. Do we have anything that we want to discuss further in open session here? Kim?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion going forward that we do have, unless necessary, and there's some kind of motion or notification beforehand, that we do put a time limit on our meetings. I think that we kind of need to, I think our agenda states till 5:30, and I think it's important that we try and adhere as best as possible that we stick with like a 2-hour time limit with our meetings. And then when things get maybe a little bit more intense, when we're looking at, specific sites, just where things get more intense, that we could look at maybe going longer. But I noticed from our past couple meetings watching, and people have had to leave, and so I think that just kind of ruins the flow of the meeting. And when you start getting over a certain amount of time, people start to lose focus.
Do I have a second?
No.
Sue? Discussion? I'll open the discussion. We're trying to build, the gem of Norfolk, and we can't conduct business outside of these board meetings. So once a month is what was deemed not enough, and we're in a fairly critical phase for the engineers in the group trying to nail down site selection criteria. So I have a tough time trying to balance between limiting the meeting length and actually conducting enough business. So that we have to try and conduct enough business that we can actually advance the process. Go ahead.
And in response, respectfully, I think that if we don't want to put a specific limit on it, that's fine, and I'm not arguing the fact that we're building, we're in the process of putting together a plan for Crown Jewel of Norfolk County. But I think our meetings need to be, somehow we need to streamline them. They need to be more productive, a little bit quick. There needs to be something's kind of amiss, and it's not just my thoughts. I'm just trying to get the most out of the group and the staff time that we have, and being cognizant of that we do have staff that are here late, and we did have many staff here that, probably in hindsight we didn't necessarily need to have today. I just want to make sure we streamline things and that we're very, very respectful of the time constraints for other individuals as well.
Any other comments? Ian? Ian 1? Ian Neville? Go ahead, Ian. Ian, can you just turn your mic on?
Did everybody hear me or not?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Well, that's my comments, really. I just think that 2 hours, in many cases, is going to be too difficult to accomplish what we accomplish, and then we have to wait another month. And when you get to the next item on the roadmap and the timelines, you'll see what the impact of that potentially has. So.
Yep. Ian, you had your hand up first.
Thank you. Through the chair, I understand the intent of the motion, and I do support the intent of trying to streamline our meetings. We could be taking better advantage of some procedural tools that we have at our disposal in terms of how a committee is structured, consent items. We have a lot of information to get through, and for those that have it in their possession, they're free to read it. When you go through consent items, you basically just stick your hand up in the air to receive it as information. If you want something pulled or you want to speak to it specifically, you have an opportunity to do so. That might be a tool that we could use potentially, because we do have a lot of reports coming back, whether it be a breakdown of our tours that have taken place, whether it be site selection criteria updates, whether it be roadmap. Some of these items could be put forward as a consent item, and it could be simply received as information, again, unless someone felt it was important to debate it or to maybe make an amendment or make a counter proposal. So that's part of my first comment. But also getting back to the scheduling, and this is the second piece to it, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable considering the motion if we had a full table here. And there's quite a few people that are absent. It could very easily get into, let's move our meeting times. And I wouldn't feel comfortable having that discussion when we have a very small group here today. We're lucky to have quorum today, to be quite frank. So I would like to respectfully ask to have it deferred, or if you're thinking of removing it, because I think the intent's been made, Councillor Huffman, that we need to look at streamlining. We're getting past the hour here, and I feel that's well received by the group here. It would be very important to also make that impression upon those that have chosen not to meet with us today, whether they had a conflict or not. Perhaps, again, it wasn't conducive to their schedule to have such a long meeting. I know that these meetings have started to drag on a little long in the tooth here. So those are just my comments. I thought I'd make them. I thought they're prudent to our conversation now. I'd love to get back to maybe closing the meeting that we have today and getting through the business that's before us.
You had your hand up earlier.
Yes, no, in response to Ian, my point exactly. And the other thing too is when you don't, I'm not necessarily saying that we would have to limit. I mean, when you do have a time frame, you can always agree to go past that time frame. But because it's it seems that we don't really have an end time in mind, that's where things start to go all out. Whereas if we do kind of have a 3:30 to 5:30, and then at a certain point, maybe at 5:15, that's where people would say, we're motioning to, go past 5:30. But there does need to be some structure to that point. So I can withdraw that motion. That's fine, because I think the point's been understood that we do need to rope it in a bit. So.
How about this then? In the future, we'll, when we're talking about the requirements for the site and the requirements, we'll start with a motion to discuss or just consent. And then if somebody opens up to discuss, then we'll proceed to have a discussion on the item. And if we just move to consent, then we can just move to consent instead. And that may speed things up that way. Does that make sense? Do we need a motion for that, or are we good there? Good, okay. All right, I had no idea that we were going to have to go line by line through that either, but hopefully we're good there. The site selection criteria update. We've covered the project roadmap update. Ian, do we want to do this by consent, or do we want to discuss this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you may, I should give an explanation as to what stage this is at, because when this is actually fully developed, this is likely the one item that you're all going to be using, and is a great communication tool once it's done. So let me just, if I may, give a brief overview, okay?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. The document you have before us is really, it's a work in progress. What I've identified here, or attempted to identify, in sequential order as best as I can determine, these are the things that must happen. It may not be perfect in sequence, and you'll notice that the first part of this report is more heavily populated than the latter part. Because construction and those other features you see at the very back, once they're expanded, they're going to take up another 2 pages at least. But we're not at that stage. We're at the stage in the planning, validity, and needs assessment stages is how I look at it. And what will happen is these tasks that are identified here will be taken and put into a Gantt chart. Now, when I meet with the IT folks, we'll look at the software packages that are available that will be able to do that. And once you got that workplace or that roadmap in place and the permission issues and all those other factors are taken care of, this becomes a living document. So it's populated with whatever happened, and it can be provided to the community or anybody else that needs to look at it. But you'll also be able to understand the interdependency between some of these tasks. And the naming and the identification here may not be 100%. For example, what happened in the room just now, if we're not going to pursue a public consultation process on the criteria, that would be adjusted. But again, if we already had the roadmap in a Gantt chart form and everybody had access to it, bam, we'd likely do that tonight and it would be gone, and the timelines would change. The other thing that this will do, the Gantt chart, it'll establish milestones. And it'll also establish drop dead dates for whatever the reason may be. So again, everybody will have a better understanding of what we're facing as we go down the road. So again, once it's finished and completed, that's what I would refer to as a roadmap.
Are there any discussion? I know most of the board just received this today. Perhaps we could just have a motion to accept this as information today. We can sit down, digest it over the course of a week, and come back to Ian, say by April 8th, close of business with any comments and suggestions. And we'll take that in the requirements working group and work through it as best we can and try and get it into a Gantt chart of some kind so that you people who don't use Gantt charts on a frequent basis know what we're talking about. Ian. I've never seen one not slide, but at least it's a plan to start with. Plans never survive first contact, but whatever. So can I have a motion that we just receive this as information? And with a deadline for comment back to Ian for the 8th of April. Ian?
I would move that.
Seconded? Sue? All in favor? All of us, except Ian? So he's got his pen in his hand. It's okay, you were outvoted anyway. It's information. Communication plan we have discussed. County project management software update. Bill, do we have?
Through the chair, I believe we jumped to that earlier, and
Yes, we did. We talked about it.
IT is to meet with Ian Neville, I believe, and pull that together. So they know about it, but we haven't set a meeting together yet. So.
All right. County usage reports update. Facility usage. Bill, that's back to you.
Through the chair of the board, this is one spot staff are working on this, and I think I need some clarification because I believe Mike Simones from Public Works is working very closely with JJ Knotts on the electricity, the energy use sort of thing. And so when I sat with my group as far as facility usage, for instance, the seniors, they're like, well, there's 550 members. What else do you need? And I said, I think that's it. But do we need to go in what they do, programming, that sort of stuff? And the same as I can give you the amount of hours of ice time that are booked in Talbot, And as far as the pool, we can give you as many, the hours that are booked. I just wasn't sure, because staff can come with this much or this much, and I just thought I would, I felt a little silly, but I said, well, I'll go back and ask the group, so whatever we bring is appropriate. So if I could just have a little conversation and for a little more direction, I can definitely have that stuff very quickly. It's just what exactly are we after?
Okay, I can give you an example for the pool. When I spoke to a couple of other pools, I asked for the pool loading, and they were talking about the number of bathers per day, and that's useful facility information for chemicals and you know, the sizing of a facility, that sort of thing. Usage by hour is also beneficial, but maybe not quite as important as by day. I can't speak to the arena usage, but those hockey players on the board could probably come up with a good metric for you to deliver there too. I have no idea, but exactly. Well, the numbers and the usage types, that's a good consideration. Sue.
Through you to the chair, to Bill, is I would like to know hours in a gym. Like, I know there are wait lists for volleyball teams, adult volleyball teams that can't get gym usage. I know that NYBA doesn't have enough gym time. I also know that the Simcoe Minor Baseball struggles to get enough gym time for spring training. So it's those user groups that struggle to get time in a gym, and we need to know what the usage is right now, because they're at capacity in school gyms at night, and even the adult recreation that's available right now at night for other user groups.
Through the chair to board member. I was going on a Talbot, the senior center, and the rec center. And obviously, we are looking at a gym for the new facility, but Norfolk County presently doesn't have a gym. We have, I believe you're on the tour, we have the Norfolk, Norfolk room, and that's used a little bit by the dryland training for the swim team and that sort of stuff. But as far as the gymnasium for volleyball and stuff like that, it's not necessarily a Norfolk County thing because the schools have it. So I don't know if I can get that information. I'll stick with the 3 facilities, but I don't know if I can go to the gymnasium. I can just tell you that we are approached through recreation. You know, does Norfolk County have its own gym? No, we recommend, you know, the school boards, things like that. Does that help?
Could we pull that information from the board, the education board?
I could get information with regards to that, for sure, to bring back just as use of a gym.
That would be really, really beneficial, and if we could hear from the survey, we need to target the survey audience of people who are getting turned away from those gyms.
I think going forward too, that the survey will answer those questions.
Yes.
So we'll leave it to the survey to answer those questions with the user groups, making sure that we hit all the user groups that use gyms in our county.
Okay. Kim?
Is the purpose of these figures for funding applications?
No, it's more for the design. We don't want to build a gym 3 football fields in length if we need 1 basketball court, that kind of thing.
Okay,
maybe,
I was
or maybe
feeling
we
that
don't
we were-
even need a gym. You know, I think we do, but you know,
No.
trying to justify some of the
do,
facilities.
still don't. Okay. Yeah.
The other thing perhaps we could get would be the number of times the Potters Guild gets together in order to figure out the use of a multi-use room and how many multi-use rooms we may need as we move forward. That'll be valuable information as we're getting into the design phase, I think.
Through the chair. Also, that's a good point that I didn't think about the Potters, the artists, and the young theaters.
Yes.
Because they are theaters, actors, I guess. They are tenants in that building now, so we would assume they would move along. So that's a good point. I can bring that back as well. So that does help clarify me and what you want. I'll go numbers, and I'll try to break it down in user groups. That information we all definitely have. So
Okay, yeah, just time, like, if the Potters are only there once a month for 1 hour, then we can probably justify a multi-use room with a group of other people, like the painters and those kind of people. But if they're there 10 hours a day, clearly they can't be. So, any more comments, Ian?
through the chair, the board member, I know for my public works days we're benchmarking on everything. The thing we find with recreational stuff, if you there's a lot of apples, oranges, bananas out there. You've got big cities with 10,000 people within 4 blocks of your facility, or you've got Norfolk where your facilities are all spread out. So it's very tough. So I think I can honestly answer that you know, there's a rough reference of a municipality of 65,000 people. 60,000, I think it is, needs 1 pool, sort of thing. But if you have a competitive swim team and you know, they have regional meets and stuff, is that a 25 meter, is that a 50 meter? There's nothing on that. So that would be tough. I think tough for me. I know it was mentioned before, and I've kind of skirted and given some thought with staff, and there's just nothing. I mean, even our meeting rooms and stuff, it just depends from the area to the area. So it's not as if we can compare ourselves to somebody on that.
Yeah.
If it doesn't exist, that's fine. The next one was, can you provide the latest inspection reports on the building that the seniors occupy, i.e. building inspectors, fire inspectors, and structural engineers? Do you have that kind of information? And again, the only reason I even suggest that, it's a background information for the business plan. Now, my impression of looking through that building, it's likely not the most ideal, but what are the other, I'm sure that the county has addressed some of those, but do you have the reports?
Through the chair to the board member, yes, there was Director of Recreation, Todd Shoemaker, who some of you met, did forward that to Kristen, and it's a consultant's report on that building. Now, there was some issue with the attachment, Kristen, you couldn't open? Okay, so we do have that, so that can be supplied, and we have one as well. I think the summaries will be sent the summaries have been sent, and I think Todd has forwarded the complete reports, which looking back, I probably should have. So I think sometime between now and whenever Kristen gets to it, you will have full reports from a consultant on all 3 facilities that we looked at. It will not be Culver Street, where my office was, but you will have the Senior Center Talbot and the Rec Center. And that should give you the background on that.
And the third item, Mr. Chair, was whether or not there's and I think I talked to Bill about this before, whether you've ever developed a common metric for comparison of costs, and I'm talking about the net operating cost associated with that facility relative to the square foot surface of the playing surface, whether it's the pool or the ice surface.
The chair, we did do that with our hockey arenas, the 6 of them, and averaged them together for a user fee report. So they've taken the square footage of the building, and they've got the summer rental of the building, which is the buildings and the floor, and then in the wintertime is the ice surface. So we do have that for the arenas. To my knowledge, we have not got that for the pool. Also called the Recreational Center, because you can see you've got another arena, you've got the pool, and you've got all kinds of meeting space. We could probably get that. It would take a while. And then obviously the Senior Center is a tough thing to get, because I don't think they track how many members they have a day, but there are 550 members by the square foot. Maybe you could come up with that. It's probably not as useful information in the Senior Centers as it would be the ice rinks or the pool.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just one final comment on the seniors. Of all the buildings I looked at, that was the one I thought, oh, they got to get out of here, sort of thing. I mean, it was the one that was obviously in most dire need of something more compatible to seniors' use anyway, because even the access in and out and stairs and all that sort of stuff has to be taken into consideration. But anyway, again, if it's not available, I don't want staff to go to any length to bring it up, because I just was jotting down items relative to a business plan. If it ever comes to a case where you start getting queried on some of these things, you say, oh, here's the data, here's the data, here's the comparison, and usually, you know, the argument or the debate is over in short order, depending on those circumstances. Thank you.
Through the chair, as an action item, I will bring back the information we have on the arenas, and I will ask staff about the pool. That I don't think I'll have that for a meeting or two, but the arenas I'll have back here for next time to give us an idea.
Okay, facility in service and out of service update, again, for Bill. Did you get any of that sorted out yet, or is it still
Through the chair, I'm still working on that, but again, just a little more further information. What exactly you're looking for on that? Because staff have, again, various degrees of details of information they can bring. So if I can just have a little conversation, exactly what you want, I'll have this back next meeting as well.
Well, what I can say about the pool again, you know, we had another situation where a breakdown in the chemical balance took it offline for a number of hours on Sunday, and that affected one of the key user groups at the pool. And I'm looking specifically for evidence that can support putting in the right infrastructure. For instance, in London, at the Canada Games Centre, they've got a redundant pump system on standby waiting. So if they have a mechanical on one pump system, they fire up the other one, they get 0 time down. So that's the downtime can be backlinked to saying, okay, now we have a traceability for the requirement for a dual redundant pump system. That kind of thing. If we could have data for a year or two just on the usage per day, I think that's enough granularity for the pool that I'm looking for. I can divide it by 5 to figure out lane sizes and stuff like that myself. But Ian.
To the board members, that does help because staff were tied up into, you know, amount of times things were fouled by a swimmer, that sort of thing. And I don't think you want to count that. Basically, I like Ian's idea of we're open this many hours, and obviously you do need a little time for the pool to rest in between. But as far as anything chemical or mechanical, those would be the only two things, and I think that covers 90% of it. So
Yeah.
Clear as bell, and we will have that for the next meeting as well.
Yeah. And I don't know about hockey arenas, what takes them down.
Through the chair to the, yeah. As far as arenas, as long as you don't have a mechanical failure such as the condenser like we have in Waterford this year, I don't think we're going to see any great downtime at all. If something did fail, you have 24, 48 hours that ice is going to stay, sort of thing, and a lot of those things. So it'd have to be a pretty good power outage or something major to break, like this condenser, before we ever lost that. So I can look, but I don't think you're going to get much time on that. I mean, Talbot Gardens was one when the seating was down. Obviously, we lost 3 weeks there. Condenser, we've lost 3 weeks in Waterford, but that's all I can remember as far as, for the most part, being down.
Okay. Kim?
And I just want to add too, the thing with the pool is that that is our only indoor pool. Whereas with the arenas, if there is some kind of malfunction that, can't be prevented, like the condenser or, some structural issue, there are other ice surfaces that we're able to fit users into, per se. But as long as I've been around arenas, so that's long. It's over 50 years.
The two,
50.
the two metrics, kind of usage and in-service and out-of-service, kind of speak to the
Yeah.
reliability of the overall facility.
I can't think of
and
any
the
time
disruption.
that there's been any, and this is many, many arenas all over, that there's been, other than you said, like some kind of equipment thing.
Okay. Any further discussion there? Demographics planning. I think we received some 2009 data that maybe that should be distributed to the whole board. If Kristen, did you get that, or did I get that directly from the fella you pointed me at? I think I will distribute you 2009 data that I received, so that you can compare 2009 to 2014 and kind of extrapolate. But there was not much in the past due to the amalgamation of the communities. Ian? Well, I will tell you that the 2014 is the latest. Yeah, we all received that, and 2014 is based on the 2011 census, so it's 8 years old. Okay, but there is the 2016 census data is available online for some extrapolation. Does anybody have anything else for demographics? No? Okay, fundraising planning, we'll cover that fairly quickly here. We talked about the 3 to 5 facilities. Bill's still waiting on some information from staff on that. Federal and provincial grant leads, anything to update us, Bill?
No, through the chair, I have spoke with finance staff on this, and right now there are a number of funds out from the feds, from the province. The first round were for roads, and we are still, James Johnson just said, they're coming out, our eyes to the ears of the ground, I guess, sort of thing. And as soon as recreational stuff come out, like staff are on that sort of thing, it'll just be interesting on where we are in our process, getting this, if we're looking at this facility ahead. And also, we'll look for things like if there happens to be a pile of money for seniors that come out. We know we want to have a senior center with this, but I will bring details ahead. A lot of this is for new senior centers, let's say, and past funding was, but if something came out that this is to advance programs in place, well, wow, it's going to fit in nice with us. And if not, then we'll keep an eye on that for this committee. Anything that you folks hear, please let us know. James and his group do well, and we do too, but there's always stuff that come out. But sometimes you have to be cautious that it's for existing or for new, and it sometimes doesn't relate to what Norfolk needs.
Ian?
The ideal situation is to have a lot of
Yeah, we have, yeah. We have been over that ground earlier, a couple of months ago, and the Wellmont Center was done that way. They had it sitting on the shelf when the funding was made available. They pulled it out and threw the application in, and they were approved right away. So that is the way to go, and as we progress beyond the current fiscal year into the next fiscal year, we'll probably have to budget a little more for that design-build service or the architectural drawings in order to get to that phase. But that hopefully is our goal. I think that's it. Do we have any other business to discuss tonight?